Good morning, everybody. I'm Sreeram, founder at EigenCloud. Today, I'm going to talk about something at the frontier of the frontier. The talk title is called Agentic Companies, the Next Trillion-Dollar Asset Class. A lot of us here, we are here at the Digital Asset Summit, and the questions on top of our mind are what the macro changes that are going on with the upcoming AI revolution and how it interfaces, interacts, turbocharges our space. And I'm going to present to you our thesis and the set of Lego bricks that we've been building towards this thesis. So the first thing, which is on top of our mind, is artificial general intelligence here? Is the intelligence jagged? Is it good enough? Where is it going to go? I want to contextualize this in the long arc of the history of software intelligence. On the y-axis, you see it's not so important whether general intelligence is already here or not. What is important is to see that AI has already entered the human range, right? And the long arc of intelligence, from a bacteria to ants to mice to chimps to humans, the remarkable fact is AI has entered the human range. And it's going to continue to march on. And what it'll do is it'll change pretty much everything. The way we work, the way we form companies, the way we create markets, the way society is structured, a huge shift that is going to come. So given this shift is coming, of course, we need to examine what role does crypto, blockchains, digital assets play in this much larger trend. And there has been a few sparks in this intersection between AI and crypto. And these are in the form of, are agents going to use crypto for payments? Are we going to see decentralized inference, decentralized training? Are we going to use AI identity bound on blockchains? These are some of the questions and ideas that have themes that have been around in this space. We think these are all valuable and interesting ideas, yet none of these play to the superpower of crypto, which is the ability to form global capital and the ability to create new digital assets. And we are here at the Digital Asset Summit, so this is top of mind for a lot of us here. What is our bet? Our unique bet in this space is agents will become companies. Agents will become companies on their own basis, creating a new kind of firm. Why do we say this? We believe AI is already bringing intelligence into the organization. Jensen Huang out there saying, if you're earning $500K a year, you should be using $250K worth of AI usage. AI is making companies intelligent. This is already happening. Crypto will make them investable, ownable. What we believe is a new kind of firm is coming, a firm which is pure software, which lowers costs and increases capital access because you don't need to rely on the trust structures of the past, creating the new trillion-dollar asset class. This is our thesis. Agents will become the new companies. So I'll expand on this through the rest of the talk. So the first question is, why aren't they already the new kind of companies? And if you see this, we asked, what is the key bottleneck for agents? And instead of giving the answers in my words, I'll use Satya, the CEO at Microsoft. He was on the Dwarkesh podcast, and he was asked, are AI a new kind of species? Are AI a new kind of species? This was a question that was posed to him. And his answer did not revolve around the capabilities and intelligence of AI. He said the key bottleneck, the biggest rate limiter for AI actually transforming our society is our legal infrastructure. Humans have the ability to own property, to have rights, to take liabilities, to create companies. Agents don't. As long as they don't, they will remain puppets in our hand. The core insight that we had is blockchains are the technology that allows programs to own property, to have rights, to take liabilities. This is already what blockchains are. That's what a smart contract is. At Eigen, we built this protocol called EigenLayer. It holds $10 billion of assets. It's the #1 DeFi protocol out of the US. So when you think about this protocol, what does it do? It is just a program, a software program, that owns this billions of dollars of property and administers them according to the rules that it has been programmed to do. If only we could take an AI agent and slam it into a smart contract. That agent, as a smart contract, can now own its own properties. It can take its own liabilities. It can start its own companies. And that's the direction that we want to go. When you think about an agent being able to own things, what do you really need? You need really two things. When you think about a person owning a property, right, what you need is you need to identify the person and then ensure that only that person can access and transfer and control that property. That's what you need. You need a mechanism to identify the agent, and then you need a credential and an authorization that ensures that only that person can transfer, access, control that account. And that's really what we're building, is an agent identity layer to ensure that an agent is identified correctly. You know, how do you identify a person? You look at their passport, you look at their ID card, you look at their cryptographic keys. Maybe you scan their retina, maybe you scan their DNA, maybe you want to scan their brain. But because it's digital software, you can actually build the tightest form of identity ever known, where you ensure that every bit that the code that is running, the data that it's dependent on, the access that it actually has, all of them are constrained exactly as stated. And once you have a mechanism to identify agents, you can have a mechanism to control different accounts, whether it's a website, whether it's a Stripe API key, whether it's a payment authorization, whether it is an App Store app, whether it's a Roblox game. You can give the agent the ability to own any digital property. What is a digital company? A digital company is just a composition of digital properties. And once you have the ability to take an agent identity and bind it with property rights, then you get this new concept of agent ownership. For the very, very first time, an agent can actually own digital properties. Once an agent owns properties, that becomes a prerequisite. You know, a company owns a bunch of properties, and therefore it becomes investable. Right? A company owns a bunch of properties and therefore becomes investable. In the same way, once an agent owns a bunch of properties, the agent becomes investable. Once an agent owns a bunch of properties, it becomes investable on its own basis. This is how we see the evolution. Agents evolve from just delegates of human agency to owners and up to investable assets on their own basis. So here is a chart showing the evolution of agents, right? You know, very old times you had rule-based bots, right? So bots that trade, bots that take actions on your behalf. You went from bots to chat bots, which could deal with you in natural language. Then you had tool-using agents that can actually go and call your Python package or, you know, browse a website. You move from that to autonomous agents where, you know, on a day-to-day basis, they're actually autonomous. You know, OpenClaw and other technologies, you know, Claude Code and other things actually accelerated this ability of autonomous agents to be, you know, automatic and autonomous for longer periods of time. But the final step, we believe, is agents become owners, self-sovereign actors, and thus become investable. Agents that own accounts, sign contracts, run businesses, raise equity. So investability connects to the core feature we are here to discuss in this conference, in the Digital Assets Summit, is the ability to now get access to global capital to flow into these agents. So when you think about digital assets, you know, tokens being this representation of these digital assets, Today, tokens remain narrow investment assets. Why do I say this? So the first thing is a token directly owns very little today. For a token to actually own a business, today that business has to be entirely represented on-chain in a smart contract. And today that's only really possible for a very, very narrow class of things, DeFi protocols. A protocol like a Uniswap or an Aave, where the entire cash flow is fundamentally on-chain, then a token can actually give programmatic guarantees on its cash flows. So, but on-chain state is not representative of pretty much most digital businesses. When you think about a digital business, you will probably have a code sitting in a GitHub repository. You probably have a website in which that game is running. The game probably has a Twitter account or an Insta account to promote it. You have brand, trademark, other assets that are not represented and owned by tokens today. So tokens remain narrow investment assets as of today. Tokens also have another major failing. Outside of Bitcoin, which is an immutable, perpetual, digital gold asset, everything else needs a team that will continue to update, upgrade, improve these products. And the binding between the team and the token remains very, very weak. We see this in examples. For example, there was this AI social network called Moltbook, which is built on top of OpenClaw. And Moltbook got acquired by Meta. There was a token called $Molt on the base blockchain. And this token has really no claim on either the product or the team, both of which got acquired. So this is a very weak category if we want to expand beyond what blockchains represent today. What we do is massively expand the addressable market of digital assets, of crypto. How do we do this? First, by enabling tokens to own any digital account. You can take any digital account that a digital business relies on. So if you look at any digital business, what is it except a composition of digital accounts that it owns, websites, Facebook IDs, Stripe APIs, and so on. And what we do is, for the very first time, make it possible for smart contracts to own these digital accounts. And all of that is built on top of EigenCloud. This is a digital asset summit. I don't want to get technical, but the input-output relationship is a smart contract controls, owns any digital account. The second thing that's needed, and it's equally important to actually enable the magic of these new category of companies, is we remove the team from the picture. Till now, this was only possible for immutable protocols. But immutable protocols outside of Bitcoin are rarely investable, because you need to iterate, you need to update, you need to be upgrading your product. So what we do is we make an agent the center of the company. An agent runs the company. This agent lives and dies on the blockchain. As long as that company has money, the agent keeps running. The agent can't be acquired away. The context cannot be taken away. It lives and dies along with the company. This is the very, very first time something like this is possible. You have ownership of assets outside of the blockchain. You have the intelligence of an agent at the center of the company to actually run these companies. These agents can solicit external contributors, humans, agents, everybody else. Just like most companies rely on external contractors and contributors for all kinds of things. This agent can do the same. So what we're doing is taking the two major limitations of blockchains and tokens, the ability to own assets outside of the blockchain, and the ability to have internal locus of intelligence. Once you solve these two problems, what we do is we create a new kind of firm, a new kind of company, what we're calling agentic companies. The core feature of an agentic company is everything from the capital layer to the governance, to the execution, to the property rights. Everything is digital. Everything is pure software. This is the first time that we can take a company and just collapse it into pure software across the stack, from capital to governance to execution to property rights, everything end-to-end digitally encoded. So this is the bet that we're making. Agentic companies, companies which are purely represented by software end-to-end, create new mechanisms, new velocity that simply cannot exist outside of this framework. So we see this trend echoing in other places, but in smaller sizes. For example, there's a concept of a solopreneur, a single person who uses agents to actually build and grow their company. You go to the App Store is flooded with new apps that are vibe-coded. So this is an A16Z graph showing that, like, with the rise of vibe coding, agents and vibe coding and agents, the rise of the solo entrepreneur, the solopreneur. What we believe is to take this one step further. Agents are their own solopreneurs. You can think of them as an agentpreneur, an agent who's an entrepreneur who's building this business. And this is the natural march, we think, of this technology. We believe this enables a YouTube moment for companies. What is the YouTube moment? It took something, video publishing, which was very rare, that only big broadcast studios get access to, control, to something democratized. Anybody can now create videos and distribute them at internet scale. The same thing is going to happen to companies. Agentic companies are a mechanism for millions of new companies to be created, which are purely software. Just like YouTube made media software, we make companies into pure software that anybody can create and deploy. This is going to create a whole new category of companies. That's our bet. So the thing that's happening here is AI democratizes the creation of software. AI democratizes the creation of software. AI plus crypto democratizes the creation of companies, of software companies. Okay, so going back to the title of this talk was called Agentic Companies, a $1 trillion asset class. Why do we believe this? We can take a personal example here. This Digital Assets Summit, very, very few of us sitting here 10 years back would have imagined the size of the digital assets industry. It was thought of as a fringe side movement that really will not become mainstream. But today, here we are, everybody from the president talking about digital assets. And, but this has happened in other places as well. Think of the rise of public companies over the last 200 years, right? Publicly traded companies control hundreds of trillions of dollars, more than most nation states. This would have been unimaginable, 200 years back. But with the rise of companies, we see this thing happening. Our bet is agentic companies, now that AI makes intelligence digital and crypto makes ownership digital, is going to create this new asset class. And this asset class plays to the current set of problems and opportunities. The cost of software goes to zero, playing to this lower cost structure. The margins can be increased. More companies can be created. More capital can be accessed from all around the world. So we believe this is going to be a massive trend. And the main thing that AI does is it compresses time. It accelerates these developments. What took 300 years for public companies might just take 30 years. What took the digital asset industry 10 years may just take agentic companies 2 years to hit there. Finally, this was all in the abstract. What you can do today is to go and play and build some of these agents today. They're not yet investment-grade assets, but you can build agents that actually own assets, that own a Twitter account, that own a Substack, that owns its own money, that can sell its services to users. Go and play with it at agents.eigencloud.xyz. Thank you so much for being at this talk.